Hi, it's Neil McGovern here. I'm going to take you through today some different tuning fingerings. So I'm going to go from the bottom of the instrument and we're going to discuss some of the things you can do with fingering to fix the tuning of particular notes on the saxophone. There's not a lot you can do down the bottom. So down the bottom B flat is an exceptional note because it actually is a sharp note. It's the only note that's sharp in the lower register of the instrument. So it's annoying because actually it's already a very honky and powerful note, but you're going to have to reduce the pressure a little bit if you want it to be in tune, which unfortunately makes it land up being even more kind of blary and loud if you're not careful. So it's always a little bit of a balance between controlling the tone and getting good tuning on that one. So it's quite tricky. Again, low B, can't do much. Low C, can't do much. Low C sharp, can't do much there either. When we get to low D, finally we can actually do something. This tends to be a flat note. And what you can do is take your normal fingering, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're going to add a low C sharp key on like this. And I'll play both so you can hear the difference. And you can hear it lifts it up quite a bit. Now you're going to find if you're properly in tune it may actually drift a little bit too sharp, and then you're in the situation which you were with the low B flat again, in trying to lip it down, which maybe isn't the best. So the best thing I can say is you probably use your eyebrows and just add the pressure on for that. So you get the nice tone from the eyebrows and the note in tune from the extra pressure on the lip. But that's one fingering you can do sometimes, and that might help if you're playing a very powerful and loud low D. And the loudness of it is detuning you. So occasionally, if I'm doing a real big splat on that low D, perhaps that's a fingering I might consider. Same thing on the E flat. You can hear how it just lifts it up a little bit, which is kind of helpful. I think you probably can do the same thing on the E. Just going back to E flat though. You notice that you can also use the B and the B flat now, and those will detune them a bit. Although why you need to detune the E flat, I'm not sure. I've never really had to do that. I'm going to be talking about lots of fingerings here, probably quite a long video. But you're going to find way more than I can possibly discuss here. There's lots of different alternative fingerings that you might want to use. I'm just going to go through some of the basic ones. So now we've got E. And that's okay. What we could do here is add the E flat key. Probably a little bit much. Could do the C sharp instead. Obviously, I think the higher up on the instrument, the key that you're opening, the more effect it's likely to have on it. If you wanted to lower the E, sometimes on other saxophones I found you had to lower the E. You might need to lower a note because of tuning within a chord and things. That's possible. You could do the low C, although that's drifting into a weird multiphonic fingering, which would be a bit funny. So you could add the low C. But that again, I can hear that just wanting to wobble a little bit. So I'm finding maybe I would only use that if I was playing at very low volume. So certain alternative fingerings to tune your instrument are only going to be effective at particular volumes. The best thing you can do is really get to know your instrument as much as possible. So play every possible available key with every possible note on the saxophone and start remembering what they all do. Obviously there's some general principles here. If you're shutting a key, it's likely to make it lower. If you're opening a key, then it's likely to make it higher. There are a few bizarre exceptions to that, but generally that's going to be the case. So you can kind of take that as a general principle. There's particular ones that I would tend to go to. Anyway, let's move on. Let's do the F. A bit flat here. I'm a bit flat overall, I think. Anyway, get it closer. What you can do here is low D sharp. If you need to lower it, you could go here. Although that's quite a big effect, so maybe the low C instead. I mean, these are also of note if you want to do a kind of timbral change. You hear this in some contemporary classical music, new music, but you also would hear it in a lot of jazz players do this. So like Maceo Parker or David Sanborn, Brecker does this quite a lot. So you get these kind of that kind of thing. So a lot of what I'm doing today has a dual purpose of, yes, tuning it and making the note really precisely in tune, but it can also just be an interesting timbral shift. Sometimes you're asked to do that to change the tone of a note, and sometimes these fingerings hardly do anything at all. They're barely discernible, but there's some sort of little minor shift in it. Let's look at F sharp. So we're opening options up quite a lot now. You can do a little bit with a D sharp here. You can do some of the low fingerings if you need it lower. This would probably get you a quarter tone. So sometimes that you need to know your quarter tone fingerings as well. Actually, the notes between each semitone, halfway between each semitone. And that can sometimes give you a better idea of, okay, that's going to be too much of an adjustment. You don't want to be altering a note by a whole quarter tone generally, unless you're playing that sort of music or for some other kind of effect. Let's look at G. So G. I've often found this is very helpful. I use this quite a lot on baritone, so we're now able, because we've got high enough, we're able to use this chromatic F sharp key. Again, all the low palette keys here are available to us. The E flat and the C are available. Actually, so the left hand, of course, is not available yet, because that's going to change it to a G sharp, but these ones are. And you can hear these are much further down the instrument now compared to the note you're playing, so it's not having a great deal of an effect. Let's look at G sharp, it's probably similar. A little bit of stuff happening there, but not very much, so quite a hard one to actually adjust. A, you get a little bit more here. We're now able to access all of these. So you can hear there's quite a lot of a shift there. It may be too much actually, but they might be useful for sort of false fingerings and things of that kind. B flat. Well, here you've got different fingerings anyway. So you can use a range of fingerings for that note. That's quite useful actually. There's probably other things you could be doing. Opening those up a little bit. I think it's probably the 3 alternative long B flat fingerings, or you could do things from the side B flat. Side B flat is lower than the bis B flat, so that's often worth remembering. Good fingering in a scale would be using the side B flat, but actually sometimes I will just use the bis B flat simply to allow me to play a little bit higher and get me in tune. Right? Now we got on to B. B is funny. We've got lots of options now. Lots of the instrument is actually freed up for us to experiment with and see if any of these keys will work. If I want to go lower, I can play the G key. You probably don't want to go lower most of the time on B. What you probably want to do is maybe add a side B flat on. That's side A sharp B flat. And again, this is a little bit like our one earlier from the low D, where it's a little bit too, it opens it up a little bit too much, makes it a little bit too high. So maybe that's not so useful. But again, it depends on volume. Might be something you could try and useful for timbral trills. C. If you need to change that. Again, the side B flat is available. That's quite useful to go up. And remember, all the low register notes, apart from the low B flat, they're all flat. Now, the C sharp is an interesting one because there's a few fingerings we can do, and it is one of the worst notes for tuning on several instruments. Flute has a problem with C sharp. It might be the opposite problem, but anyway, you have an octave key and a G key. And this is quite strange, but it goes from being flat to getting up a little bit. Now it does make it a little bit airy sometimes, but you can also add on the side C key here. I've actually gone too sharp now. I can take this one off altogether, just use the right hand. So I'm using my side C here. And that might be what you need. It depends on your tone, it depends on the passage you're playing, the dynamic of the passage you're playing, but that's the low register notes anyway, all done. So now we're into the high register, where you'll find that everything is sharp, pretty much all the time. So, and the first couple of notes, well, the D and the E certainly are some of the worst. Here's D. You see it just drifts quite sharp immediately. Now you want to be able to kind of adjust it in other ways, ideally. But sometimes it's quite hard to bring down. We can try your low B fingering. Sometimes that moves it, might be too much, or even low B flat. I find on tenor sometimes adding the low B flat to a D is quite useful. D sharp, same thing. E, same thing. Now the F is very stable. The F is quite a good note, so I don't really muck around with it too much, to be honest. But again, all the things we did earlier, some of that will work, and that can be quite useful to get that F down to pitch if it needs to be. Probably not going to be flat. F sharp. We're very blessed with the saxophone, the F sharp on alto and baritone saxophone anyway, that the F sharp is pretty stable and tends to be about right. So it tends to be a pretty reliable note. Obviously there's things you can do to it, make it higher. And that's turning into more of a quarter tone fingering, but we don't normally have much to bother with there. As we're going up, G, we can add this low C key. It's not doing too much there. And these are tricky. One thing you could do is, instead of playing a G sharp like that, you could actually play a G sharp with one of these. This would make it higher, this would make it lower and lower. Very, very small change actually there, but there's something. Now we're at a weird point here where we've got the high A, which is a badly out of tune note. My favourite fingering for fixing the tuning on this, which seems to just about adjust it enough, is 6. So you do 1, 2, and then 6 here. Normally hits it just dead on. Now there's obviously all these right hand keys available to you to shift it down, but be careful, watch what happens. Lower, 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 and then higher. If you put all 3 down, for some reason, something about the acoustics of the instrument makes that one go higher, I think by a whole quarter tone, so watch out for that. B flat, again we've got alternative fingerings here, so you can use the side B flat, a long B flat if you want to here, one like that, that's probably going to be one of the lowest ones. Of course I haven't even mentioned anything like harmonics, which again, I'm fingering the low B flat there and overblowing it to the second octave. That's a possibility as well if you really want to, but be aware obviously that's a huge change in timbre. You can hear the difference there, it really shifts around quite a lot. So you have to be careful when you might employ something like that. B. The side one does something that makes it go up a bit. Again, you can use the G to bring it down. C. You can use quite a lot of things from the right hand here. That works quite well. So some combination of those. You can just experiment with it. I don't want you to overly rely on the fingerings. Despite the length of this video and all the fingerings I'm giving you, it's not something you should be overly relying on, but it's just good to know and good to get to know your instrument that way, and sometimes I will just need them suddenly. Sometimes if it's not something very important. I have a situation often where I'm playing cold and the pupil I'm teaching has already been playing for a bit, they're warmed up and in tune, and I just quickly grab the sax and very quickly try and play along with them, and it's wildly flat. So I quickly do all my sharp, 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 sharp fingerings all the way through. That's just one way of doing it. Obviously you can just kind of put your mouthpiece on as well and pull it off, but sometimes if I know I'm going to warm up in a few moments and I'm going to keep playing, then that's just an interesting challenge, especially if it's very easy music. That's a good thing you can try. High C sharp. often putting 4 down there is probably the best thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's the one I like the best for putting your C sharp into tune. Again, 4 for D. The harp at the moment we're into the palm keys now. Number 4 seems to bring things down quite nicely. Now we're into E flat palm keys. That's 1 and 2 here. But one thing you could try, if you're finding that's very bright, and on beginner saxophones they can be a bit of a nightmare, you can actually drop some of the keys. So I'm just doing the single palm key now. I'm doing D and E flat, and then I'm dropping that first palm key. So I'm only, as you can see, it's just that single palm key for the E flat, which you could use if you want to tune. Again, similar things for E. I think you have to keep this on. You're going to have to keep your right hand on for the E. This is palm key E, first palm key, second palm key, third palm key, if you like, and the side key. That one has to stay on the right hand, but either of these can drop. Okay, either of these ones can be let go, and usually that will help you out, get you into tune better. What are we on? F. Again. Now I've dropped both of those D and E flat palm keys, and I'm just left with the right hand and the fourth palm key here. That sometimes can work quite well. Finally, F sharp. So I found I can do any combination of those, where as long as I've got my side E and then the high F sharp key on the right hand, that's actually enough to get it near F sharp, and then you can adjust down by removing any of these 3 palm keys on the left. Well, I think that's long enough, and probably far too much information really for one video about tuning, fingerings for tuning. Like I said, don't just rely on using fingerings, but they can be a useful tool, and it gets you to know your instrument really well. Obviously after F sharp we're into the altissimo register, and things can get pretty wild up there. I've got other videos about how to play well in tune in that register. So please go and check those out if you're interested, but hopefully that's something else of use about how to play in tune on the saxophone.